Testing, testing.
Turn my microphone on. Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting, Town of Qualicum Beach. I start by acknowledging that we're having this meeting on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular our Qualicum First Nation. We have the agenda and there is one amendment under item 9.1b. That's near the end. This is about a council meeting rescheduling. So any other changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is adopted by consent. The consent agenda, which is the correspondence log, can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Recognition. This has been a very good year for getting recognized for the work our staff does. And in this case, the town of Qualicum Beach was awarded the Spirit of Innovation Award for the fast and frictionless, an AI-powered solution that turns pains into gains at the Municipal Information System Association. And we received a trophy. Do we have the trophy handy? Okay, Mr. Sang, if you would pick that up. And also with Sam and Jason, if you would come to the front, and we'll have an official picture taken. That's good work. Then we have delegations. Mr. J. Hill, come on up. You know the drill.
Thank you for having me. All right. I'll just wait. Oh, beautiful. Perfect. Can I just test this real quick? Yeah. Oh. There you go. Beautiful. Do I press the timer? Do you know? Or does that automatically start?
I think they have control over at the booth.
Beautiful. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me today, councillors and mayor. I really appreciate the opportunity of speaking to you today about the SPCA, give you an overview and update about the services we're providing to the community. My name is Janelle Hill. I am the center manager for the Parksville, Qualicum Beach SPCA. So I'm going to really quickly go over the first 3 slides here about the SPCA as a whole. I think there's some really important details in there, but I know you're more eager to learn about the contract services specific to the Qualicum Beach area. So I'll spend a bit more time talking about some incoming and outgoing animals that we've got into our care. So we did have a relaunch of our strategic plan in 2025, including our mission statement, which was updated, which is protecting vulnerable animals and mobilizing communities so that people and animals can thrive together. Our programs and services that we offer are animal services and protection, outreach and community services, as well as social change. There's some fantastic statistics in there for the organization as a whole. Again, I don't have a lot of time to go over that, but please feel free to go over that in your own time at a later date. But let's go into the contract services here in Qualicum Beach. As you're aware, we do operate a fully equipped animal shelter just outside the Parksville area in the RDN. We have 3 full-time staff members, 2 part-time, and that 3 is including myself. We have 2 part-timers and 1 casual team member as well. We're really supported by about 65 active volunteers that we have come in regularly for their weekly shift, help with animal care, cleaning, dishes, yard work, you name it, they're there helping and supporting us. We do receive and impound and hold stray animals within the community. We're contracted to take in stray dogs within the town limits here in Qualicum Beach, but we do take cats and small animals as well, just because there's very few places for them to go. We do accept animals surrendered by Qualicum Beach residents, as well as facilitate adoptions, provide access to spay and neuter services, as well as our community pet food bank. And then we also sell licenses under the bylaw for dogs specifically. Just a note about our contract, it did expire in May of 2025. We have been asked to renew it. We have sent the renewal. It has not been signed yet, so we're hoping that that will continue on for the upcoming years. As part of our contract services, over the last year, we did take in and care for 28 stray and surrendered animals specifically from the town of Qualicum Beach. Those numbers are broken into 3 surrenders and 25 stray and abandoned animals. We did return 3 animals to their families and adopted out 18 animals into new and loving homes. And again, that's specific to the town of Qualicum Beach. Here are some numbers comparing Qualicum Beach intake compared to our total intake. So over the last year, we took 4 dogs in from Qualicum Beach. Out of the 97 we took in total, so about 4% of the dogs that are coming into our care are from Qualicum Beach. 12 cats came in from Qualicum Beach out of the 176 we got in, so that's about 7% of our total intake. 12 small animals, which are rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, mice, out of the 20, so about 60% of small animals, and then we didn't get any birds or fish from Qualicum Beach. If we look at total adoptions on the right-hand side there, we did adopt out 82 dogs in the last year. 5 of them went to Qualicum Beach residents. Out of the 154 cat adoptions we did, 11 of them went to Qualicum Beach residents. And then we adopted out 2 birds to Qualicum Beach residents as well out of those numbers. In addition to incoming and outgoing animals that come through our doors, we also distribute over 904 kilograms of pet food through our community pet food bank, which is through our center, but we also have partners that help us distribute that pet food to the community as well. Certain vet clinics and the Salvation Army help with that. And then we also provided emergency boarding services. So those are for people who temporarily need to keep their animals in our care and then are returned to their owners after that time. So we provided that for 2 dogs over the last year. Thank you so much for having me, and my contact information is shared on that slide.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions
welcome.
for the delegation? Thank you for the work you do and be part of it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have about invasive species. Gerard, come on up. Not sure if I pronounced your last name correctly. And just pull the microphone up a bit towards you. There you go.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Jarrett. I hold a Bachelor of Natural Resource Protection from Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo. And I operate as a local ecological restoration consultant. So I repair degraded, damaged, destroyed ecosystems. I was approached by Councillor Jean Young earlier this year at a community presentation I was giving to present here on the need for a municipal ban on the sale of invasive species within the town of Qualicum Beach. Given my experience with regulatory processes, environmental legislation, and my specific interest with invasive species management, I feel I'm uniquely suited to speak on this issue. As you may be aware, invasive species collectively pose a serious threat to the environment, economy, human health. We understand this and actively manage them in our communities and natural areas. Contrary to this, invasive species are still readily available for purchase at merchandisers across the province, demonstrating a significant gap in legislation that underscores current management approaches. Their availability is often seasonal, some are available year-round. It is bewildering going to often entirely volunteer-based stewardship events, managing English ivy, for example, a pretty serious invasive plant, and then seeing it on store shelves shortly after. It is often improperly disposed of, dumped in green spaces or over fences where it then continues to spread. Where I feel we are making strides as a province is education and awareness, whether through community events, educational materials, webinars, social media. That said, most of the public is completely plant blind. That is, they are largely unable to see or notice the plants in their environment. Therefore, I feel that placing the onus on the consumer, rather than the horticultural industry itself, to differentiate whether products they are selling are harmful or not is incredibly dangerous. In a similar sense, there are many volunteer opt-in programs where businesses can commit to not selling invasive species. However, these programs only work if businesses are willingly participating. As someone who has contacted many of these businesses about this issue, there's evidently not enough buy-in. While changes at higher levels of government are entirely necessary, there is currently no provincial legislation banning the sale or trade of invasive species. When questions regarding this issue are brought up at conferences or meetings, for example, they typically go unanswered and are quickly dismissed. It's a big elephant in the room. With this lack of provincial leadership for what is largely a nonpartisan issue, municipalities across the province do have the fundamental power to protect communities from further harm. Taking proactive action by banning the sale of invasive species will save the municipality future time, money, and resources. This is about preventing new introductions. Earlier this year, I began pushing for this exact action in the city of Nanaimo, where I'm coming to you today. Through various meetings and votes, presentations, and the support of an eager council member, as it stands, the city of Nanaimo has been tasked with drafting a bylaw prohibiting the sale of invasive species within the municipality. I think it's courageous, and it's inspiring other municipalities to follow suit, and it's my hope that this can include the town of Qualicum Beach. With this in mind, I'm here today requesting that the town of Qualicum Beach follow the lead of other communities, such as the District of Squamish, and now the City of Nanaimo, and begin the process of adopting a bylaw that prohibits the sowing, planting, cultivating, releasing, or allowing the accumulation or spread of invasive species, and the sale or distribution of invasive plants and animals within the municipality. Given the tools we have available as municipalities, this is about laying the groundwork to better protect our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to the delegation? Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you for your presentation and bringing awareness to this issue, because I think Qualicum Beach has been on board for a long time. The problem is trying to get it to be a higher priority. We have it in our Urban Forest Master Plan. We have it in our climate change adaptation plan. We have lots of volunteers in the community who are engaged and trying their best to eradicate. But do you have any suggestions on how do we get it to the top to make it more of a priority? Are there any resources available? Financing?
Yeah, there are lots of resources available, like the Invasive Species Council of BC. Their website is just incredible. I find that, yeah, there you go, eh? Getting people to care the minute that you start talking about money, especially when it gets into like millions of dollars across the province, that's usually what gets people to start caring more. Oh, good. Yeah, talking about money is huge, and then that education and awareness component too is really just getting across to people that plants are different. This yellow plant, it may look similar to this one, but this one is yellow flag iris, and it's an ecosystem engineer, and it completely eats, for lack of a better word, wetlands. This kind of thing. And then tying it into biodiversity and climate change targets, this kind of thing is it's a huge component. Biodiversity loss is like invasive species are like #2 for biodiversity loss after habitat loss. So it's a pretty pressing issue that doesn't get enough attention. Yeah.
So what is an initial start that you'd recommend for us to do? Is it like just let's ban the sale of invasive species in our stores? Is that the first step, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, that there are these volunteer opt-in programs where businesses can basically say, hey, we're going to commit to not selling them, but these programs have been around for many, many years, and it's clear that there's not enough buy-in. So I do think this is like the big piece that's missing, and I'll reemphasize, it's about laying the groundwork because under the community charter, like not every single invasive species that we recognize now, as these lists are constantly evolving, are included on that. They can be changed though, of course, but there's like a specific list that will have to be referred to. So species like English ivy are on there, whereas others aren't. And English ivy is one of the species that is available year-round, incredibly difficult to get rid of. So that's kind of the focus of a lot of my talks about this. But yeah, in the city of Nanaimo, like a notice of motion was introduced, that was debated, and then a draft report was drafted, and then that was debated as well, and then that's when the city was then tasked to draft a bylaw. And there's also like a education and awareness component to that, for example, and it's a multi-stage process. Yeah.
In Nanaimo, where they've adopted this initiative,
Yeah.
are they patrolling garden stores to see that these species, especially like English ivy, are not for sale anymore?
Well, the bylaw is still being drafted, but I would hope that that is part of that once it's done. But at least, community members like myself, or we'll say other environmentally minded folks that notice this, will be able to say, hey, you're breaking the law, whereas now, as it stands, they're legally allowed to sell these species. Yeah.
I think we can take this up in the future I'm just speaking. I think we can take this up as one of those review for our strategic plan to see if we can do something about this. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if mostly you're concerned about plant invasive species. Is there any work that you've done or are aware of in terms of animal invasive species that might be applicable?
Yeah, so my work largely focuses around plants, so that's, a lot of my discussion here, but I include the animals component because that's how, like the end of my presentation there is how the District of Squamish has worded it in their bylaw, and I think the wording really does matter, and including animals is important. Species like goldfish that seem really non-problematic, they grow to the size of their environment. So if you have a goldfish in a little tiny bowl in your home, it'll stay really tiny, but the minute that gets dumped into a lake or a pond, people think they're dead when they're often not. They grow to the size of their environment, so you can have like football-sized goldfish that just eat like, it'll say salmon, eggs, trout, like eggs, everything that's in there, they'll just continue to eat it. And that's just one example. Red-eared sliders, they compete with our western painted turtles. That's another pet that's often released. Rabbits are released. So this is another part of the discussion as well. I'm sure an animal expert could speak more on, but yeah, the animal component is important too.
Yeah, just one other comment, I guess, is I'm often shocked by the number of people who think it's okay to throw their yard clippings over a fence or on private or public property. Do you have any tips or anything about educating people? Because oftentimes that's how the invasive species are spread.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct. Yeah, no, I've gone to a number of sites to do restoration, and you can often find the original basket with the tags included for, what has invaded an entire park, which then translates to hundreds of hours of restoration. That's, again, often volunteer, but if we were paying people appropriately, it'd be like thousands and thousands of dollars for relatively small areas. Species like yellow archangel, it's often included in seasonal hanging basket arrangements, and that's one that people will dump, and then it'll just keep going. It's very fragile, so like hand doing it is just exhausting. Shelley Creek Park, which is close by, that's one where they've had to basically, using clean cardboard, smother the entire park to knock this down because it just creates like a monoculture understory. So yeah, species like common periwinkle is another one. English ivy is often included as like a little tiny component of a hanging basket, which will then continue to spread. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it's bewildering. And then that component of people don't know what they're buying. They just buy a flower because it looks pretty. and that's where that stops and starts. Yeah.
Sorry, minor crisis. I do think we want to be careful about regulating some animals, but I know the obvious one I always hear on the island is bullfrogs, who
Yes.
are really, really, really problematic. And again, to your point, they grow and they eat everything.
Yes.
So I do think there's a good conversation for strategic planning, but I just caution if you say goldfish, some people might not understand
Yeah.
why as much. So if we're going to be very broad, we're going to have to be very active in engaging the public on why we're doing that. So just with all the staff time we don't have, just be cautious about how much we're asking them to do.
Yeah, really emphasizing why these regulations are important is key. Like invasive species impact us all in various ways, but just really making sure that people understand that. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is correspondence, and there was a request for a letter of support. And you have a draft copy of that. Is Councillor Kay with us? Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And then the second and third reading for alternate means of public notice. Ms. Svensson, you pick up right where you left off.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. This was discussed at the meeting that I was not at, so I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Learberg, who handled it for me in my absence.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Westbrook. Just quickly for this one, we did give first reading at the last meeting. There was a request to include a provision, just to include in the bylaw, that the town will endeavor to post notices in the newspaper as well as the the required advertising methods identified in the bylaw when publication deadlines permit and until such a time as the paper is not available, just to provide that extra layer of clarity.
Thank you. So it's for second reading as amended, and then Councillor Bishop, we can do a third reading. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander, discussion on amending. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And then as amended for second reading. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And then for third reading. Councillor Vander, Councillor Young. For third reading, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And then of adoption of the Town of Qualicum Beach Miscellaneous Rates Bylaw, and this is for adoption. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Young, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And then third reading, and this is a bit of a correction, so I'm going to ask Mr. Hare to explain why we need to rescind third reading and make the amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. After third reading was given to the bylaw, it was discovered that there were a couple of errors in the references to the community charter in the whereas clauses in bylaw 913. So those corrections have been made. They were just minor correction, technicality. Our apologies for that. So we had to rescind third reading because the bylaw needs to be reread with the corrected references. And we still will be able to have the bylaw adopted in time to forward it to BC assessment for the 2026 permissive tax exemptions.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. So the first job that we have to do is to rescind the third reading. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Harrison, discussion, all in favor, opposed if any, so that's rescinded. And then third reading as amended. Bylaw number 913, 2025, third reading, Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander, discussion, all in favor, opposed, carried, thank you. And then the Eaglecrest OCP, Eaglecrest and the Fish Community Plan and zoning amendment bylaws. Mr. Seals.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. Originally, there was an intention to provide a written report, but given that the public hearing was Monday, I'm providing this verbal report to let council and the public know what the next steps are in this process. So the town is continuing to work towards the November 1st deadline to complete all the due diligence and make a final decision on the Eaglecrest acquisition. That due diligence includes a final decision on the official community plan and zoning amendment bylaws that were anticipated to be on the agenda today. Following the public hearing on Monday, staff have spent a lot of time reviewing and reflecting on the feedback we've received. And as in any public process, the goal at this point is to offer meaningful responses to those key themes, and those would be for council consideration. So some of the themes we heard, council was there, public was there, and so I think you'll recognize some of them. There were a lot of concerns about parkland and the distribution of parkland in the Eaglecrest neighborhood, and whether there's opportunities to integrate more parkland on the west side of Eaglecrest. We heard comments about density and some concerns about how the density that was being proposed could impact adjacent residential areas. So a little bit more careful look needs to be taken at that. View corridors from existing homes and how development could impact those view corridors. We heard a lot of comments about the potential commercial space at the intersection of Eaglecrest and Country Club Drive. Overall, I would offer the observation that I think there was a lot of general support for the acquisition expressed, but there were conditions on that support, recognizing that although they liked the idea of public ownership, they wanted the town to really take a sober second thought at a few of the issues that they identified in the public hearing. So at this stage in a process like this, the mix of public feedback that we've received is really to be expected and is a normal part of a constructive process. So I think where we are right now is appropriate for this process. So now there's an opportunity for the town to consider adjustments in response to that community input, whether it's adjusting densities or land uses, dedicating more parkland, or identifying walking loops and public uses of that area, that type. So there's no bylaws on the agenda today, so no council decision. This is just a verbal update. We would expect that updated bylaws will be prepared and ready for council consideration on October 22nd, which is the next regular council meeting. Council would be considering third reading at that meeting, and then could subsequently consider adoption either at the same meeting, because land use bylaws can be adopted at the same time as third reading, or at a special council meeting on October 27th. So a few little general reminders. One reminder is that the town council has formally recognized that there would be a second public process if the town does decide to proceed with the acquisition. So adjustments to things like land use, density, design, all that would still continue. The discussions would continue if council does proceed prior to November 1st. So that's the first reminder. And the second is that because the public hearing has officially closed, council shouldn't be receiving comments directly from the public. There will likely be some people that send you things, and that is what it is. But for the most part, we'd invite the public to address all comments and questions to staff, and we can respond to them. It's information going directly to the decision makers that is better directed to staff at this point. So once again, the November 1st deadline, if council does choose to proceed, there would be a second public process later, so that the refinements and adjustments to the land use plan would continue at that point. That's the verbal update. Thank you.
Any questions to Mr. Seals? Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so I did find it very interesting. There was a comment made in the public hearing from the gentleman who had worked for that large development company in Vancouver. And so afterwards, I was sort of talking to him about that. He mentioned the difference between surface parking and underground parking and how that impacts revenues. I thought that was very interesting. I think if we're going to propose multifamily, we should really think about what does the parking look like and how much money are we getting if we require underground parking, because it does change the math. More broadly, though, I think one of the issues I have just with the whole process is that it seemed like folks were thinking about how much money are we going to get for the amount we're spending right now, not the amount of we're going to be spending in the future. And there are a lot of unknowns, which, we don't do the timelines that we agreed to. It's just tough to make the timelines work to get all the information. So I do worry that we're going to have some surprises 4 years from now that maybe we'll have used up the land. More broadly speaking, I do agree with what the ERA put forward, with the recognition that in the future we can change it again. if need be, if we need to generate more revenue. But I just thought this whole discussion of thinking about the parking is something I hadn't really thought of before. And I'm really glad it came up because it sort of got me thinking, if we put a lot of multifamily, we're going to have a lot of surface parking if we maximize our value, and that maybe might not be the most attractive thing. So I just really appreciate that comment. But more broadly, I really agree with the ERA letter they sent in, not just pandering to Susan Lloyd, who's in the audience right now. But I do think, too, that we're going to have to, in about a year or two's time, when we know more information and have more projections, we're going to have to probably look at the zoning again. So sort of like has been said by Mr. Sales, it is going to be probably an ongoing process if we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any further comments? So that was just for information. For the public's benefit, when would be the next meeting that they can attend where we have these conversations and decisions?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So if council does proceed with the acquisition, the town would be moving fairly quickly into the ways to achieve attainable market housing discussion, which overlaps a lot with Eaglecrest. You know, if the Eaglecrest lands are available for exploration of housing types, it makes the ways to achieve attainable market housing project that more kind of relevant and actionable. So in your answer to your question, I think we would anticipate a first meeting either in late November, possibly December. December gets a little bit awkward, but certainly by January we would be seeing public rollout of all the engagement process. Thank you.
Okay. My question was more about council may want to make amendments to the first and second reading of the bylaw, where perhaps there's less focus on how much money we can get out of these lands and more to talk about the character of the neighborhood. So when would be appropriate for us to plan to make those kind of decisions and make motions accordingly?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So staff are reviewing all the public comments, and we would be bringing forward a package to council on October 22nd that would include, recommended revisions to the bylaws, but council would still have the ability to make further revisions if they'd like to do that at the time. So staff are going to put forward what we anticipate as the best kind of compromise to address as many community concerns as possible. But council would have that decision-making authority on the 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. I think often in our reports, we have the background, the purpose, and we also have alternatives. And I think with some of the alternatives, which I anticipate will come, I think should also have the impact on the financial picture. So that will all come together on the 22nd. Thank you. Councillor, anybody else before? Councillor for a second time? Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to echo what the mayor said. I really like the idea maybe of having, like staff are mentioning, bringing forward a compromise scenario, but then maybe also this is a minimum density scenario. This is the compromise. This is the status quo. Status quo we already have. Compromise is what you're doing anyways. Minimum density is pretty straightforward because it's basically make everything R1 and call it a day. So if that's not too much work, I think that might be helpful. And then just a brief mention, as the mayor mentioned, of the implications of that. I think that would allow for an informed discussion.
Thank you. Councillor,
I'm just thinking, could we possibly do another quick presentation to the public after our amendments? Because this is a big purchase, and I think our residents would really like to know exactly, or just a little more detail as what amendments we've made and how we're going forward with our decision on this voting process.
Thank you. Councillor, Mrs. Sales.
Yes, thank you. So there wouldn't be an opportunity for a second public meeting before the November 1st deadline, but if council does choose to proceed, there's a lot of opportunities to get back out and engage the community and show them what changes have been done to reflect their concerns, and further refinements are expected to continue. If the town buys it, those would continue in the future. Council can consider future zoning amendments, could consider refinements through covenants or development agreements. There's a lot of opportunities even after November 1st, regardless of that decision. Does that answer the question?
I can sense that there will be a reduction in proceeds because the zoning may be more in line with what we heard at the public hearing. The other side is the expenses. And one of the biggest expense that's on the list is the roundabout. Before we had our first roundabout, people said we want traffic lights. I think most people know that they're building a new roundabout in Port Alberni by the Visitors Center area. And that went out to contract and it was approved for $8 million. And I think it's just a three-legged roundabout. So will we have a report at that time, on the 22nd, that only looks at, okay, we may have lower expectations from our revenue, but we also may have a local, more detailed numbers about the cost, because the roundabout was a big item on that list of things that we feel we need to put in the plan. Mr. Seals?
Yes, thank you. So some of the discussion around detailed valuation has occurred in camera because it relates to the town's anticipated revenue from individual parcels. So there will be some information that council would receive in an in-camera setting. But the discussion on the 22nd will address those trade-offs that you're talking about, where if council lowers density and the revenue associated with that, then what would be the trade-offs in terms of investments that council had been perhaps contemplating. So I would, just two other notes if you'd indulge me. One is that the traffic study, the transportation study is still underway. That would not be finalized before the 22nd. What we will get from that is an analysis of the three active intersections as well as the portion of Royal Dornoch that comes close to the highway to identify, when you look at all four areas, what's the best combination of lights, roundabouts, and other traffic opportunities. And they would be looking at the option of going with a light. But we won't have that in any sort of a final form before the 22nd. So just wanted to flag that as information. I would also like to note, because there has been a number of comments about, well, let's just make it all single family. We heard that. I just want to make it entirely clear that there is no longer a zone that is only single family in the town of Qualicum Beach or pretty much any municipality in British Columbia as a result of the province's Bill 44. So when we talk about a baseline to say, well, let's just take it down to the kind of minimum density, that minimum density is around 60 units per hectare, just based on subdivision districts and 4 units per lot. So that one speaker in the public hearing noted that the official community plan in its current iteration, as of 2018, stated 30 units per hectare. That number is irrelevant after the province's changes. So that number is 60 units per hectare. So yes, we will be looking at an alternative that essentially establishes that as a baseline, and then the discussion about what the implications are for revenues and that sort of thing. So that's a discussion that's underway. Just offer that to remind council that 30 units per hectare is 2018, it's not 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think as we move forward, I think you'll see staff asking council to consider traffic solutions, of which a roundabout or a light may be some of those options. But I think the director hit it, on the head when he talked about we really have to look at those 3 intersections and create a traffic solution for the area. And so that will be detailed work that will be coming forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Oh, and just the last point too, because we received the donation, we're not in the same financial position we were 3 months ago, where we were really had our backs up against the wall financially. So we do have time. So if folks are worried about what will be put at the corner or not, this is going to take a lot of time. We don't have to decide that in the next 3 weeks. There's no rush on that part. And we do want to make sure we reach out to Mr. Rescheduled, get all the expertise, make sure we have an updated plan if we are doing either of the two, whichever decision we're making. Because I think the roundabout design currently is a bit long in the tooth and might need to be updated a bit.
Which one?
The current roundabout design, I think, is about 10 years old or so.
Yeah.
So just pointing out, like, these decisions are not being made immediately. And because we have the financial backing of that donation, we don't have to make immediate decisions that are permanent. We may choose to do so as a council, that's our choice, but that impetus to thou shalt do something isn't quite as immediate as it used to be. So I hope we don't look at these decisions as something we have to make in the next 2 weeks, because, forgive me, I think there's a chance we might not make the best decision if we try to rush it right now.
Thank you. And I'd like to comment, if I could, just on what Ms. Varela said, that we're looking at all intersections along the highway that goes into Eaglecrest. So that's a more wholesome approach. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, in general, I found that the public hearing was very constructive, and there were a lot of really good points mentioned, and I just would like to reassure the public, the residents, that we are looking seriously at all the comments that were made and will find a best alternative. And I just think that that's what the planning department is trying to do. So I have confidence that when we come back on the 22nd, we'll have good information and good ideas based on what the public has told us.
When I saw first that we were trying to report today, so quickly after the public hearing, it almost would seem like we would be rushing it through, or we have preconceived ideas. This shows that we're not that big a hurry, that we're not going to, after Monday, have a Wednesday report. I appreciate staff working hard on what the best recommendations could be, if it's alternative, based on the input we received. So with that, that was just for information. Councillor Young.
Excuse me, I'm new at this whole process, and this is a big buy. And I'm just thinking, if I was the public, I would still like to kind of know the final details that we arrive at, and for council to make the vote on. And I would like to hear from people, again, one more time, just to say that at least we get a majority saying that, okay, this is a good process. I just would like that surety from our public.
Mrs. Hills.
Thank you. So the timeline doesn't permit another public hearing. There's just no, it's not feasible to adopt the bylaws prior to the deadline of November 1st while allowing for another round of public input and perhaps revision. But having said that, there is certainly an opportunity to explain in very clear terms the changes that are made in response to public input. And so that would be the summary given on the 22nd, and we can walk through each parcel individually and discuss what the comments and concerns were in regard to that parcel and the response that's reflected in the bylaws at that time. So the timeline is very tight, and I think no one would disagree that a bit more time would make people a little more comfortable. However, having said that, that is the negotiated timeline between the buyer and the seller, and they were not willing to go any farther. So at this point, I think we can't presume that we'll get more time. The decision at this point that council's wrestling with is whether the acquisition is financially feasible and whether the risks that could stem from things that are unknown at this time are manageable given the financial situation. So a lot of speakers at the public hearing identified that there are risks, and we don't have all the information at this time. And I think that's a good observation. And it's similar to many investments that people make throughout their lives. You buy a house on the basis of a home inspection and mortgage analysis and a reflection on your income and the availability of, but you don't necessarily know every renovation that's going to be required over the course of the next 20 years. You just need to know that you are in a financial position to make the acquisition. So I don't know if that's a useful parallel, but the decision that council will wrestle with prior to November 1st is how we manage that risk versus reward, and whether it tilts in the favor of the acquisition or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up question?
So given that we will have our meeting on October 22nd, the agenda usually comes out ahead of time. So would it be okay for the public to respond to us with their comments then, if they can't comment to us at this point?
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So no, the public hearing has closed. Council can no longer receive comments. So again, while this negotiated timeline is very tight, I think staff are to be commended on the fact that they did manage to pull off 2 open houses with in excess of 600 people attending. You did do a survey to which you've had over 800. I think we neared 900 responses. Staff went out and met with probably 11 community groups. So even though this is a compressed timeline, the amount of engagement that staff has sought to achieve within that crunch has been really quite remarkable. So, and again, a good turnout at the public hearing. So I understand that the concern about timeline, but I do think the efforts made to date by staff really need to be acknowledged, and the great participation by this public, because even though the timeline is tight, they've showed up in significant numbers. So thank you, Your Worship.
We also provide, at the end of my comments regarding public hearings, people cannot directly connect with council, but they can through staff. So if they have a comment, it can be referred to our planning department or corporate administration. Councillor Harrison.
Sorry, I just triggered a bit by the comment from Mr. Sales, because my mom's triumph in her view was making a comment about a home inspection at the Eaglecrest get-together. But I think I do commend staff for the work they've done. They've done a lot of work in public outreach. The problem is we just don't have all the information yet. We actually haven't finished the home inspection yet, really. All the infrastructure costs are sort of an unknown. The environmental assessment is due mid-month, I believe, from the presentation we received. There are a lot of unknown unknowns right now with their property, and these are not a $40,000 reno. These are, multiple hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars worth of costs. So that's just my one concern too. The other is that just a comment on the feedback we've received so far. I remember one of the many, many emails we received, and the kudos to the public. I will say it was great to see so many people showed up. That was great democracy writ large. Whether you agree or disagree with all the comments, it was great to see everyone showing up, and with 1 or 2 exceptions, being very respectful. But one gentleman said he thought medium density meant 2-story single-family homes. But R1 density allows 3 stories by default from the province. And as Mr. Sales just mentioned, to our former colleague's comment about 30 units per hectare, that's no longer the legal minimum, it's now 60. So I do think we're gonna have some work to do if this moves forward with informing people of what the baseline is, and also just for the public's benefit, public hearings require, I think it's 2 weeks of notification in the paper, and we'd also have to have the whole Civic Center available. I don't think we could hold it here in council chambers. So there's just some logistical issues. That's why we can't do another public hearing, which are perfectly valid.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the update and the report and next steps. Look forward to the 22nd of October. Next is my report. I think I mentioned that even during the public hearing that we saw the rededication of the Echo Place Theater. And I don't know how council feels, but I was blown away what they did in such a short time with the money that they raised. The town never gave them any kind of a fee for service. They just, we bought 2 seats for Leonard and Marie Mustard, but it was all done by their own fundraising. So I thought what they've done on the inside and with the seats and the whole atmosphere, I think, as I said, I hope that stage shines brightly for decades to come. The other thing I just wanted to, because it was kind of at the end of the UBCM convention, where we heard about the court case from the Cowichan First Nations laying a claim on land near Richmond. So this could have a significant impact on every municipality dealing with First Nations. And we had some lawyers, some who have represented us as a town. And so I would like for the community and for us as a council, what that means for land use planning, what that means for land use settlements in general. So I know we're very busy, but I wonder at some point we could get and every community would want this, where our legal opinions would say this is what that means for land use planning with this court case decision. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as information becomes public through UBCM, I anticipate UBCM will be putting out notifications, and when those are public and shareable in a forum, we could bring those to council as an FYI, and perhaps that's a way to mainstream that information.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yep, so I am working on a very detailed write-up of UBCM, so I'm not going to talk about that because you'll be reading it in the next meeting, and I don't want to take up the time. Also, too, like I briefly in Prince George spent some time in amateur theater, and it was amazing to see the work they've done in that theater, but also brings back memories. The one time I was on stage in a production, day one, opening night, the press is there to review it, and there are 4 people on the stage, and we all forget our first line. And so it's about 20 seconds of silence, which 20 seconds doesn't sound like enough. A lot, it's an eternity when everyone's waiting for you to say something. And we're all just like blinking like deer in headlights. And then someone just says their first line and it goes on. But sheer stark terror for a moment there. But yeah, kudos to all the volunteers. They've done amazing work. I know as a council, we sort of mentioned before the fresco, and I sort of mentioned that because it is something that if you get up close to the fresco, which is iconic, it might need some work, but it's apparently stable for now. There's only other thing too is there is an event which I think almost all of council attended for reconciliation at Mabry. And there was Sari Pisi, I think is her name there, who's been instrumental on the Hamilton's Marsh. I think the Ducks Unlimited fundraiser might be related to that, but do reach out to Ms. PC. They do have a website for fundraising for Hamilton Marsh. There's a fundraising gap, and that's, I think it's 360 acres, Mayor Westbrook. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, hectares, oh my gosh. So it's a huge amount of land, some of which does have some sort of colliery impacts for the town. So if folks in town are looking for a wonderful cause to preserve, do consider that there's a, I think it's, and again, the mayor can correct me, I think it's $7 million gap.
There's a $7 million gap. We having an agreed price, $30 million, but the board felt that $7.5 million should be raised from the community. And they specifically looked at Qualicum Beach. They said, people in Qualicum Beach, they have lots of money. I said, they may have it, but they like to keep it too. But I said, what we're doing with Eaglecrest, we're buying the whole thing, but we're selling a portion of it as rezoned developable land that will generate the kind of money we short. So this is not a secret. I've mentioned this at many occasions. Why couldn't they carve out 15 2-acre parcels and sell those to make up the $7.5 million? That's my way of saying, if you don't raise the money, yeah, we're going to have to develop some, but if you raise the money, that'll mean less development. When we didn't have all the money to buy Heritage Forest, we had to borrow some money to make the deal, but I said, if we haven't paid it off in 2 years, we will create some more lots along Ramsworth. We will not create debt, will not raise taxes. This is how we're going to do it. And people felt motivated to raise the money, so we never had to take that option. And the same may apply here with Hamilton Marsh. It's a lot of money. People have other concerns, whether it's the hospital tower, $170 million for the liquid waste treatment plant. So I can see where people go, we kind of limit here. And I think carving off a piece, the appropriate piece, I think I know where that would be. We could sell those lands and raise the $7.5 million. And I make no apologies for that. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. But the board is still considering. So with that.
Yeah, so that's basically an update from both of us on all things Hamilton Marsh. But if that's something that's a cause that's near and dear to your heart, and I know there are some people in town it is, do consider reaching out and finding ways to help fund that, because when I was talking to her, basically my point is that at UBCM I talked to a gentleman from Western Forest Products, and he said with the current tariff situation that softwood lumber is facing and countervailing duties and. It's essentially uneconomical to log anything on Vancouver Valley altogether, and it's owned by a forestry company, it's owned by Mosaic. So this is where we have the most leverage because they need money, and this is going to be probably the best way for them to get revenue, because if they're operating at a loss, why would you? So this is probably when we have the most leverage in terms of ensuring the sale. Beyond that, nothing else. And yeah, there'll be a very detailed write-up in the next one. I might be including as well a few of the emails I sent out following UBCM. I would have done it earlier, but there's been a lot of Eaglecrest over the past few weeks and some College Road as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to the mayor for the next councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. My report is contained within the agenda. I will apologize in advance that I won't be in attendance at the Committee of the Whole next Wednesday. So, but I will commit definitely to watching it and listen to what goes on. So,
Great.
Thank you.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. My report is in the agenda as well. I attended a lot of meetings that for which the organizations for which I am the liaison, and as well did attend the UBCM conference and the MABR, I wouldn't call it a meeting, but get together for reconciliation, truth and reconciliation, and also attended the ceremonies for the Echo Players Theatre. I was quite, as well as being impressed with the job that they had done on the theater, I was quite impressed with the little talent show that we got to see. There was a group of teenage girls, mostly, did a musical number, and I thought they were fantastic. They were just really good, and then a couple of other acts. But it was really good, and we do have a lot of talent in the town, and actually the president, I think it is, was bemoaning the fact that Mr. Sales couldn't attend and perform for us. So I was very impressed with that. It was a lot of fun, and they did a really good job. Thank you.
My report is also included, and I just want to mention that October 25th is another repair cafe at St. Stephen's Church. So if you have anything that you need to be repaired, it's payment by donation, and it helps to keep things out of the landfill. So there's that, and there's a couple of tours. I believe Hamilton Marsh is doing a tour for people that would like to get to know more about Hamilton Marsh. And there is something else, but check some of those storefront windows for posters. You'll find out more about what's going on.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Thank you, all of Council. Staff reports. Ms. Rilla? No, Ms. Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So we have two applications from the Chamber of Commerce, one for the Halloween Candy Walk on Friday, October 31st, in similar format that they've done in previous years. So there's a resolution there for council for that. And then also for Moonlight Madness for Thursday, November the 20th, also in a similar format as in previous years, with the closure of Primrose Street from 1st to 2nd from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I think we could take them both at the same time. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Vander. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? If any, carried. And then the item that I mentioned earlier about the committee meetings reschedule. Ms. Svensson? It's on the green sheet. I think we all have it.
Yes. So we just would like to have a resolution for the annual schedule to change the, reschedule the Town Hall Committee of the Whole meeting from Monday, October 6th at 10 a.m. to Monday, November 17th at 10 a.m.
Could I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? If any, carried. And that is it for today. So thanks, everybody, and thank you, staff. Again, we've been alluded to how much work you've been undertaking with the OCP in general, and then the projects that are happening at Eaglecrest, College Heights, and all kinds of other projects that staff is working on. I think I've heard it from other people that we're doing all this stuff here, but that there's still work happening on our streets, improving safety, paving, intersections, so on. So my compliments to staff to have a lot of balls in the air. I know Oliver Watson is not here, but he's also very busy. And by the way, the light at the intersection, the roundabout, is a spectacular color. You have to go there at night to see it. Together with Steve Verkalma, I walked the Walk for Wellness. This is mental health on Sunday. So we both walked that, and it's a fundraiser and also attention getter. And I asked Mr. Watson if he would change the color around on the roundabout to reflect that initiative. So beautiful, well done. Thanks, everybody. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey, we are adjourned. Thank you.